What's going on, guys? It's Tom from Team Paradigm here, coming at you with my 8th place regional deck profile, top 8 obviously. As you can see already, I played Tearlament. I thought it was one of the best decks in the room and also one of my personal favourite decks of all time. So, of course, we had to take it to a regional where it was, straight after a Rise Hearts ban and everything. And it had a really good showing at Dortmund as well. So, why not, right? Anyways, the matchups were pretty okay overall across the day. There were a couple of sort of iffy ones like Dragon Link. I didn't have enough practice for that matchup, and unfortunately, if they open too many Bestials, it is just kind of game. And then I also ended up losing in the final round to Branded, but it was because he opened Super Poly, which is a crazy card in this format anyway, so can't be too mad. I'm very happy with the result, very pleased. It is my first regional top, so I am so ecstatic about it. But I won't talk about it much longer. I'll get straight into the profile for your guys' sake. So, starting off, we played 3 copies of Tearlament's Rhino Heart, and then 1 of each of the fuses. This is standard. A lot of people are moving over to 3 Rhino Heart now, especially because it is a better normal summon because you're trying to just mill a bunch. We are going for the non-King of the Swamp build here, so that's kind of where that adds up. Next up is 3 copies of Tearlament's Kashtira. Crazy card. It's a better Havness. Why would you not play it at 3? And then I opted to play 2 copies of Fenrir. Now, the reason for that is because it applies so much pressure going into things like the Unchained board, and even against Tier, depending on what their board is, depending on what it is that they're making, this can apply so much pressure. It outs Toad for free. It can apply pressure to that Beatrice. It forces them to use their effect early. Very strong card overall. Plus, it searches you one of the best cards in the deck. Yeah, it worked out really well for me when I drew it. Unfortunately didn't draw it much, but when I did, it was pretty good. On to the Tearlament spells and traps. 3 of the Planet, 3 copies of Scream, 1 copy of Heartbeat, 2 copies of Suliek, 1 Meta Noise, and 1 Trivakarma. Now, this all worked out really well for me over the course of the event. I didn't end up resolving Heartbeat as much as I wanted to, like the Grave Effect, because I would either mill it really early and I wanted to save my shufflers because the matchup required it, or, there was a vast other reasons as well. I did use the effect from the hand. I did use the primary effect a couple of times, which did come up. Being able to just out stuff for free, being able to force stuff was really good. Same thing with Meta Noise. I didn't really activate it much. I didn't get to it often for whatever reason, but my theory is against those rogue decks, you can really apply a lot of pressure just off of this card on its own. It gets you a free Foolish Barrel from the deck, as well as like Book of Mooning something. Like if you're playing against Rika and they normal summon Lokai, they're really not going to get that much further after you Book of Moon it. So, in theory, it worked out really well, especially at regional. You're expecting to play a lot less sort of well-known decks, I guess. But, okay, Rico on YCS Dortmund. On to the Ishizu cards. I'm not going to say much about these. Ban them. They're crazy. These don't deserve to exist. Being able to mill 5, and there are just some crazy interactions with these cards as well. That yeah, it's just so unfair, especially with the horror stuff coming out. Being able to like send one of these alongside the, I think it's Amseti, to search the sarcophagus and draw 1, and then you're milling 5 is absolutely insane. And then obviously we played Diviner, just 1 because we're not playing Baron, but it is a way to get into a level 6 so you can make Beatrice, as well as it's just being your 5th normal summon. It's a pretty okay card to have. I didn't see it much. Again, I was milling it a lot, and I would rather summon other things off of my Cross Sheep. Dangers. This is standard. I opted to play 2 and 2 because personally I like this having as much value as possible. I like my Nessie being able to actually search a monster, whereas like with sort of how other people played their list, like Gabriel Netz, he was playing 3 copies of this and only 1 Mothman, and I feel like if you draw the Mothman, you're losing like half of the value of the danger. Obviously it doesn't, that's not like the direct math on it, but that's how it felt. It was just like if they're discarding the Nessie, you're not searching anything else, and it does feel quite bad. So I opted to play 2 and 2, and it worked out really well for me. Next is the Destiny Hero package. Honestly, if you're not playing Denier, you're stupid. This card is so good. If you end up in a really weird state where you only have these two, you can end up like going for a goddess line just off of these two cards alone, which I think is insane. Yeah, it's it's honestly such a good extender. It gets you to so much, and obviously like Malicious is, well, it's 6. You want to get to Beatrice as quickly as possible. I don't think I need to explain that much more. Shittle Beast, this card drew me absolute bombs all day. It was so good. Just having a draw is phenomenal. And then 2 copies of Talents. I opted to play this as like my other piece of non-engine, I guess, next to the Fenrir. Great, phenomenal card. I just didn't draw it as much as I'd like to. I have considered playing 3, but I'd probably have to cut the Fenrirs and then maybe play something like Shyama or Destrudo in that other slot for the Fenrir, which is totally a fine thing to do. I don't think Fenrir is necessary, but it is something that has proven to be very impactful for myself. And then next we have the Power One-Offs. 1 copy of Foolish Burial, 1 copy of Goods, and 1 copy of Card Destruction. This baits out Ashes a lot, so when you're like trying to play the game, a lot of people don't want to lose what's in their hand, so they'll Ash this, which is really good. It means you can play the game with your other 4 cards, or, you know, 5 cards if you're going second. And then obviously these 2 are pretty standard. But that's it for the main. That is 40 cards straight. I will go through the extra deck very, very quickly for you guys. It is pretty standard. So the 1 Cross Sheep, the 1 Sprint, Dark, and the White Woman Jump Scare. This card was crazy all day. Just being able to like out Dragoons. I played a couple of branded decks that would try and get into Dragoon quite quickly, and being able to just out it with the Goddess was so good, so impactful. This is definitely really important, and it's really funny because you normally play it for Pearly as opposed to something like Dragoon. But yeah, these other 3 I'm pretty sure are mandatory in this day and age, in this way that the deck is built, because obviously Dark is just so impactful in the mirrors, being able to steal Bestials and things like that to be able to make your Beatrice. Sprint is Sprint, and then this is basically just Sprite Elf, so if you're not playing it in this deck, what are you doing? Then for the Exceeds monsters, 1 Dweller for the mirrors and Unchained, 1 Redoer, this card is always crazy, Bahamut Toad, again, crazy cards. I didn't make it as much as I'd want to, actually. It was a really interesting. My hands were either kind of odd, so I had to use like Redoer to get to where I wanted to, because I didn't have access to like Field Spell or something to pop a Sharon that was on my field, or whatever. Or I would just make this like in later turns, but also like Dweller sometimes is just better into certain matchups as well, because unfortunately this does lose to Super Poly, so that's also something that you have to weigh up, especially going into like the mirror. If you know you're playing into the mirror, you do just kind of want to end on the Dweller. But I digress. Beatrice, you're always making Beatrice. This is your main line, so just, yeah, if you could play 2, you'd probably play 2. And then 1 Zeus. This didn't come up for me. The only reason it didn't come up for me was because I didn't play against back row decks, so I can't really give a very insightful reason as to why I wouldn't play this, but also I don't have enough insight as to confirm why I'd play it, if that makes sense. So I still think I'd play it moving forward, just in case I do come into those simplified board states and stuff like that. But yeah, like I said, never summoned it, so I can't really make too much of a comment. And then lastly, for the fusions, we played 1 copy of Mud Dragon, 1 copy of Garura, 1 copy of Dragons de Paleo. These are our Super Poly targets, as well as our just generic extenders. Well, these 2 are, I should say. This gets you obviously into your Toad, this gets you extra draws and is a Beatrice line. This is an extra disruption, of course. The 1 Dangerous, this plus any of the Millers is crazy, and then obviously it being able to get you into Denier further if you already have a Mali in grave or something and you've put like the 2nd one back, or even giving you access to Mali again because you're using like the single one that's in your grave is really good. Yeah, overall great cards. And then obviously the main girl herself, Kaleido Heart. I don't really have much to say here. Really sad that we can't play Raw Kalos anymore, but I think King of the Swamp is just so overrated now. It's such a poor way to play the deck because you want everything that you're milling to actually do something, as opposed to a King of the Swamp that is just fusion fodder. On to the side deck now. So we played the 1 Scattershot. we all know why I'm playing this. I don't feel like I need to go into it too much. 3 copies of Jerusalem. Now, obviously, I did, if you've trying to compare my list to like other lists from like YCS Dortmund and stuff, this was being played in the main. I personally didn't like it in the main, even though I felt like I was going to see a lot of representation of Tier and some representation of Unchained, which this is also good into. I didn't want to... I felt like I was going to mill these a lot if my opponent was like as brave as I was in the tier mirror and just like milling. If they get to this, it's a very easy dark summon to get them into Beatrice a lot easier, and I didn't want to give them that. So I opted to play it in the side for when I knew it was really going to be impactful for when I was going second. And like, you know, against Branded, it really came up. Against a lot of decks, it just comes up a whole lot. So I'm really glad I played it. I'm also really glad I didn't play it in the main. 3 copies of Super Poly. This card fucks. Like, if you're playing Tearlament and you're not playing Super Poly right now, again, I think it's one of those things where I just think you're wrong. This card does so much, and we are playing one of the decks alongside, like, maybe Guardian, not Guardian Chimera, but the Chimera deck, where we don't need to add cards into our extra deck to be able to play Super Poly. We have the inherent ability to be able to just play 3 copies of this card, not worry about changing our extra and things like that, because they're part of our combo, they're part of our extension. Yeah, you just need to play this, honestly. 3 copies of Exceed's Encore. Now, this card would have been really, really good had my opponents been able to play the game whenever I drew it. I drew it against Rika to try and beat the Hyperiton, because that is the scariest part of that board, and also the Strenna. Like, if I'm able to out the Strenna so that they can't tribute it, it's very, very good. But they bricked, so unfortunately I didn't even get to use it. So they kind of bricked a card in my hand as well by doing so, but it is what it is. And then I also drew it against the tier mirror, but because I had a tier cache on field and I top decked Super Poly going into their board of Dweller, it was kind of lights from there. I didn't need this, so I just discarded this off of it, and yeah, we went ham and we won that game, obviously. 1 copy of Duster, just some more back row hate. For those matchups. I felt kind of comfortable going into back row matchups regardless, but obviously there's still some bits and bobs that you obviously need to make sure that you are going to be able to succeed in those matchups, and just having a win button like this is, yeah, why wouldn't you, when I was playing 14 and this was just like the last slot. Card's good. Tikaboo is very, very oppressive. I feel like it's such a cheap way to win, but you know, when you're playing against like mono type decks and you're able to play this, why the fuck aren't you, right? This card did me bits all day. Every time I drew this, going first into like those mono type decks, it just absolutely mopped the floor with them. They just had no way to out it. So it just free wins all day. And then card number 15 is the copy of Tearlament's Crime. Now, I never really searched it, to be honest with you. I feel like it's not really necessary. You could probably cut this and be fine without it. But it's one of those ones where it helps you beat like evenly matched and things like that. But you do have a pretty inherent way to be able to play through that stuff anyway. So, yeah, you don't really need it, but it's entirely your choice whether or not you play it or not. I still play it because I do like the card, and I think it is really good to help stop those absolute bombs, especially Dark Crawler seeing a lot more play now. It's probably better to keep this in, but hey-ho, that's just my uneducated opinion. But thank you so much for watching, guys. I really appreciate it. The shout-outs go out to the team, obviously, Team Paradigm, the sponsors down at Geek Retreat in Chelmsford. They help us out with all of our stuff. Obviously, the boys, I want to shout out my teammate James. He basically told me to play tier before Dortmund even happened. So I'm really glad that I got on the train early and got it, you know, got my list kind of settled in relatively quickly. Shout outs to a local Spencer, who absolutely clapped me with Neos and made me almost play Pearly for this event. That was a very funny story. And yeah, thank you to everyone that watched. If you like the profile, leave a comment, drop a like, subscribe to us. We are planning to do a lot more content relatively soon. It's just been a bit difficult at the moment. We've had a lot of stuff going on, a lot of stuff in the works. So, but anyways, we are so grateful for you watching. Thank you so much, and we'll see you in the next one.